This is episode 240 of the Wildlife Photography Podcast. In this episode, Q&A. Hey everybody, my name is Gerry, I'm from Walt and I. It is episode 240, which means it is a Q&A. And yeah, every 10 episodes we do this. I answer your wildlife photography related questions. I have a few here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. But I wanted to start off this episode just by digging into two issues very quickly. Yesterday on my Instagram story, I posted a little story of me sharing some thoughts after training. Now, the idea behind it was that when you train, exercise, right, and you keep track of it, it's very easy to get feedback, to know when you've improved, to know when you did more than yesterday. Did you get better? Did you lift more weight? Did you do it faster? That is super difficult when it gets to photography, because how do you judge? How do you look at your own work and say, Gerry, you're getting better? It's very difficult because it's such a subjective thing. I like my images, you might not. John likes your images, Sarah might not. You know, it's one of those. And the last while on safari, I've seen a lot of people being very unsure of themselves because they don't know where and how to get the proper feedback. And it really is difficult. And it's something I'm going to dig into in a future episode. I might chat to some of the guys on an episode. But the self-belief, knowing that you just got to keep doing, I think that's a start. I also think you need to choose which voices you listen to online, because you might post an image and there might be 150 comments saying, this is amazing, but if there's one that says, shit shot, you pay attention to that. So I think choosing the voices to who you listen to, that's very important. But also the self-belief, just knowing that, you know what, I'm doing this for fun, it looks better than last time, it makes me feel better than last time, done, move on. So I'm going to dig into that a bit more. The feedback and the comments I had on the back of that was quite good. And a lot of people ask, what can I do? I'm in a photographic rut. What do I do? So more on that in due course. I think it's a conversation we need to have. I think we put too much emphasis on social media and what people think of our work. Like, let's flash back 10 years, 10 years before Instagram, before Facebook and all these things. What did you do then? What did you think? You weren't as worried about it because not many people saw your images, or not as many as are now. Now suddenly we've got this extra judgment and what are people going to think? And I think that's crippling. And it's not the best feedback that we can have. But more on that in due course. Second thing that popped up this morning, and it's something I almost vented this morning on my Instagram story, but I decided not to. I decided to behave myself. But I posted an image of a gorilla, just a profile, beautiful shot, I think. See, I'm feeding back on my own images, beautiful shot. But it's just a portrait, side portrait of a gorilla, beautiful shot up close, and 3 people in the comments said, oh man, it looks so sad. Why do we do that though? I mean, do you really think that gorilla is sitting in Rwanda in the Volcanoes National Park feeling sad and sorry for himself? Or are you as a person projecting what you think they're feeling because of whatever thing's going on in your head, you're projecting it onto the animal? They're not sad. It was early morning, we found them, this thing was half woken up, kind of half asleep, looking around. And look, on the one side, I appreciate that people think an image I created has that kind of impact, that it makes you think the gorilla was sad. But I think for us to project too much onto wildlife is a problem. It really is. If you think all the wildlife is sad or worried or stressed or tense, that's you. It's not the animals. They just carry on. So I think there's another discussion there down the line I need to have on a podcast. Just the whole anthropomorphizing of animals and how we see them and how we photograph them. The naming of animals, which this is Kevin the lion, this is Sarah the elephant, this is Joseph the impala. Not a huge fan, and I know where it comes from, but people take it too seriously. And I think sometimes when it gets to major conservation issues, that can be a bit of a stumbling block. Funny story. Years ago, a friend came to visit me, and he has twins, 2 boys. If I say they are busy, it's a serious understatement. Anyway, at some stage, these kids find my tropical fish tank, right? and the one starts banging up on it. It's like, hey, no, the father says to the kid. So the kid says, why? And he says to him, no, they have names. And I'm like, what do you mean? He says, no, if something has a name, you're not allowed to kind of bother it, or like with fish and dogs and stuff. So I thought, interesting, but at least the kid left my fish alone. But I do think there's something there where if we only appreciate wildlife and nature for or because something has a name, we should just be looking at the whole system as a whole. Anyway, just some random thoughts. Let's get into Q&A. Like always, I said, every 10 episodes is a Q&A. Quick coffee. And a couple of days ago on my Instagram, I asked what topics you would like to cover, and these are the questions we got. So in no particular order, Q&A episode 240 starts officially now. Right, first one. Is Wild Eye considering doing safaris in Laikipia? That's in Kenya. Short answer, no. Not planning anything. We have run a few private trips up there. Nothing scheduled as of yet. Easy answer. Next one from Callum as well as the first one. Mara versus Serengeti. Now, we need to understand, if you are looking at a trip between the Mara and the Serengeti, the biggest thing I can say to you is look at when you are going. Look at when you want to go. For example, if you want to travel between July and October, and in your mind you're seeing the Great Migration, the river crossings, the dust, and so on and so forth, then you have to go to the Masai Mara, because that is where they cross the Mara River. You could potentially, depending on the year, do northern Serengeti, just south of the Kenyan border. But timing. If you want to see the Great Migration when it's calving season, you have to go to the Serengeti like Feb, March, April, because that's where that happens. So a lot of the question of Mara versus Serengeti would be the same answer as pretty much any safari. What do you want to... I had a chat to someone yesterday, a production company from the US, and they were asking, where should they go on safari? Where should they tell their viewers they must go on safari? And it doesn't work that way. So the same as Mara versus Serengeti, I'm going to ask you, what do you want to see? When do you want to go? What kind of accommodation are you looking at? Duration. All of those things will eventually push you into one or the other direction. Let's back it up a touch. A lot of people don't understand even the difference between the two. So the Masai Mara is in Kenya. The Serengeti is in Tanzania. There's no border between the two parks, but there's a national border. So if you could imagine a pear, like the fruit, the big bottom part would be the Serengeti, and the top little part would be the Masai Mara. It's considered one ecosystem. So the whole thing looks very similar. The landscapes look similar. The animals cross forward and back, right? So, which sometimes sucks if you're in Kenya and you see cheetahs walk away from you, or it's amazing if you see them come towards you over the border because the vehicles on that side can't follow. But the whole thing is seen as one ecosystem, and when and where to go will depend again on, like I said, what do you want to see and when do you want to go? That will be the answer. Game viewing wise, year round, both are phenomenal. Really, really great destinations. Big cats, wide open plains, loads of elephants. So it's great game viewing year round. But it still comes back. Mara or Serengeti? When and what? Easy answer. Next one here. Thomas Lay asked on Instagram, slow shutter panning to capture movement. Advice on this when on a game drive. Okay, so if you're on a normal game drive, which is non-photographic, you might have to kind of speak to the other guests and say, listen, can I stop and try this? Because panning is a lot of trial and error. You have to do it again and again and again. Because out of every 40 shots, you might get one or two. It's not an easy thing. So the basic technique, let's just run through this. For panning, normally I would dial down to about 1/30 of a shutter speed, depending on how fast the animal is moving. But that's a kind of baseline to start. You would hopefully get animals moving across your field of view, yes? You would pick it up there. You would focus on the shoulder of the animal, because think about it, when they move, the head goes up and down or side to side. Think of a giraffe, head does this, yeah? But focus on the shoulder, because that's one of the planes that are pretty stationary as the animal moves. Focus on the shoulder and then click, 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 shoot as he goes past on the slow shutter speed. It's that simple. More than likely, your hero shot, the best one, is going to be the one, if you started shooting on the far left to the far right, is the one that's going to be dead in the middle in front of you. That's probably going to be your hero shot. Still depends on, did you move at the same speed as the subject? Did you keep that focus point on the shoulder as the subject moved past? That's the easy part, right? On a game drive, obviously, think about this, practical terms on a game drive. If you're in East Africa and you're standing out the top of the vehicle, or you're in South Africa and you've got the bars for the roof, hopefully your vehicle does not have a roof in South Africa, you might shoot, because you're moving, you're shooting in a wide range, right? Is the pole going to be on your way? Is there someone in front of you? Is the tracker in the front, right? So all of those things take into account before you start shooting. Now, the biggest problem that I see people have with slow shutter movement is they judge it too harshly. They are judging the panning shots based on the criteria for a normal wildlife image. They are basing it on everything has to be sharp, the background has to be smooth. Forget it. That is all out the window. Quick sip of coffee, because you are now trying to show movement. So you don't even have to have anything. I'm going to say this again. You don't have to have anything sharp or in focus for a panning image to work. It's an abstract. It's an idea. It is your creative version of that animal moving. So it doesn't have to be crisp. Yes, there's a place for that, but if I can see what it is and the image feels right, keep it. I've seen people delete, and they're deleting gold. But let's bring it back. On a game drive, like I said, make sure you see where they're going. Make sure there's nothing that's going to block you as you shoot past. And also, if you have a big lens, this is a silly thing, but make sure if you're going to try and pan with your 200, 400, there's not a guest in front of you and you knock the shit out of them when you come past. That's just bad. So, shutter speed on game drive, try it. What also helps, just from a practical animal point of view, is if you know where things are going to go. For example, you drive up, there's a bunch of impala on the one side. One of them runs across. There's a very good chance that the rest will follow, because that's what they do. You can then try and shoot across, because again and again and again, that repetitive nature is where you're going to get the shot. You shoot a lot of images for one or two when you do this kind of stuff. Right. Brendan asks, luck in wildlife photography and how much it can affect the images you get. Luck in wildlife photography and how much it can affect the images you get. The answer is yes and no. Luck with regards to sightings, number one. Are you lucky enough to be in the right place at the right time? Luck, you should not rely on luck, but hopefully it's there. Does that make sense? So you need to prepare as much as you can, i.e. get the correct settings for what you think is going to happen. Predict animal movements. Look for the shots that you want, not that you've got. Often, animal will be laying down. There's a potential for that animal to go there, stretch on that branch, and then climb up the tree. Prep for that. Be ready for that. Now, that's not luck. That's using the environment and animal behavior to prepare you for the image that you want. That said, you still need to be a little bit lucky if the animal goes there. Or if you're even luckier, another one arrives out of nowhere. So there are 100% things that you cannot predict or you cannot plan for in wildlife photography. You can only be as ready as you can for the shots that you want. And then sometimes luck happens where something happens, you pick up and you shoot and you think, shit, that was lucky. That's cool, take it. But the better you know your camera, the faster you can change settings and adapt to what you're seeing, the more lucky you're going to get. It sounds kind of repetitive. It's like, I think it was Gerry that said, the more you practice, the luckier he gets or something. But the thing where a lot of people miss shots is not to do with luck. I think it's lack of knowing their camera. And I still would like to dig into this as well one day. But I think wildlife photographers, if you're on par with your craft, I think we, as wildlife photographers, are some of the photographic people in a specific genre that is the most comfortable with changing settings on the fly. I've had phenomenally competent wedding and street and landscape photographers come on a trip, and they struggled with how quickly sometimes things have to change. Because if you're walking there, the background changes when the leopard goes there. He's up the tree, then the shutter speed has to change because it gets darker. We're changing stuff all the time, and you should be changing stuff all the time. And if you are comfortable to change things all the time, you'll be able to capitalize on those lucky moments that luck throws at you. So yes, luck in wildlife photography, 100% yes and 100% no. It's a bit of both. Next one. What focus setting you use when shooting wildlife and IS, 1, 2, or 3. What focus setting you use when shooting wildlife and IS. So I take it this is to do with the focus points, right? There is no one answer here. It will be case dependent, depending. If it's a static subject that's behind or in thickets, I might want to go to a single point because I can then physically move my focus point, focus through the thickets, create like a little frame, use depth of field to throw the foreground off. Make sense? I'm not going to have a bigger focus ring like 9 or 15 points because the camera is probably going to choose the foreground, not the background. Whereas if I'm waiting for a bird to fly and it's a clear background, I might use a bigger grouping of focus points. So it's 100% dependent on what you are pointing your camera at. A lot of people don't understand, from the previous question, a lot of people don't always understand that it's also vital for you to think about this. So Marcus Hannenberg, great question. People don't think about it. Static subject. Try it again, Gerry. Subject. Static subject allows you to be more specific, fine, with your focus point. Or if you're shooting through obstructions. If you are expecting movement, for example, birds about to fly, cheetahs about to run. We had an interesting one recently in the Mara. There was a whole bunch of wildebeest that kept running. There was a female in the grass that was 100% going to catch one. She actually caught 3 in about 10 minutes. But what do you think I would have used there? Not single point, because it's just too easy. So I would open my depth of field, which you have to link to your focus point depending on what you're shooting. Open the depth of field, group focus that even if my lioness is jumping and she catches the wildebeest, if I had a single point focus, it might hit the grass behind. Here, in this case, I just put it on the center of the action and it worked because I'm allowing depth of field to do the work for me. If that does not make sense, and I mean this in the best possible way, you might have to go and look at your theory of focus points and depth of field, and I promise you if you do, you will get images you didn't in the past. Big deal. Big deal. With regards to image stability, sure, 1, 2, or 3. I'm not sure what setting or system you're shooting on, Marcus, but I normally just keep it on active. For some instances, like tripod-based, people say you have to turn it off and turn it on. I sometimes think we overthink these things. Do you want it? Don't you want it? Right? Oh no, but if you put it on a tripod and you shoot and you have it on, then the gyros are going to kick in, which causes vibration. Really? Just make the image and see if it works. It's that simple. Just make the image. Don't think about it. Just make the image and see if it works. Zoom in if you have to, check it out, and then do it again. Because if you are tripod-based, you're going to have time to change the settings. Makes sense? Because you're not going to tripod-base lion hunt because it's going to be all over the show. Yeah? But on tripod-based, normally you're shooting wider. Normally you will have time to check it out. So test it yourself, see what works. I've done both, and I tell you what, I've got to go really deep in to find any kind of difference if there is any. So I normally just have it on when I'm hand holding, and if I go tripod based, if I remember, because I don't think about these things all the time, I might turn it off, but still the images work, and that's the bottom line. Right, last one for this episode. Spoken Wildlife, that's Shazmeen from Kenya, says, how do you handle posting when you have not been in the field for a while? Do you just go quiet? Now that's interesting. How do I handle posting when I've not been in the field for a while? I think this is, and this is funny, Trevor and I spoke about this now. I don't know if he can hear me, but we spoke about this now, and he can hear me. Shazmeen asked your question, bro, right here. Yeah, so it's very interesting. So Trevor and I are going to do a podcast on this in due course, but the biggest thing for me, I think, depending on what kind of brand you want, Shazmeen, is do you just want to be known as someone who's out in the field all the time and showing nice wildlife, or do you want to be known as a person, as a brand, right? It's very easy posting from the field. It's, here's the lion, here's my coffee in the morning, here's the Mara River. It becomes repetitive because if you look at how many people now are doing that, we're drowning in the noise if you're just doing that. A lot of people who then do that, they go on safari and they're in the field. When they go back for a week, 2 weeks, a month, 3 months, they don't post anything. It comes down to branding, I think, is what do you want to be known as? I, me, do not want to be known as someone who is just a wildlife photographer. Does that answer it for you? I want to do more. I want to be more. I want to be more valuable. I want to add value even outside of the field. So, and one of the things I spoke to Trevor about this morning is I've got my standard stuff that happens all the time, in the field, out the field. I post my coffee in the morning, I post a thought for the day, which is like a motivational thing, and I post, if I have the opportunity and privilege to train, I post a make time selfie. That's me. I do it for me. However, if I don't do it because I've been doing it for so long, people start asking, oh, where is it? And that's cool because it's engagement. People want to see that. But you need to then think, when you're out of the field for a long time, you can, if you have enough content, just post one image a day to your feed. You could, for example, then go and say, post that to your story. But before you do, go in your story and say, hey, everybody, I'm currently sitting in Nairobi. I've just fetched Gibbs from the school. Kind of that's speaking your language, Shazmeen. And I was just missing moments like this. Do that as a story to the camera and then share the image to your story. So at least you're driving the engagement and people get to know the person behind the images. There's nothing wrong with just going quiet. If you just want to go quiet, that's cool. But if you have an end goal, i.e. selling safaris, selling prints, becoming a motivational speaker, wanting to build a brand to leverage a business against one day, if you have that, you're not doing yourself any favors by going quiet. That would be a very bad idea because Instagram right now, Facebook, YouTube, podcast, this is free real estate that's offering, put up your banner here, put your image here. If you're not doing it, I think you're leaving amazing branding and leverage on the table. So I don't go quiet. I find that it's easy for me to produce content pretty much any time because it's not reliant on me sharing my images. It's not. I've got YouTubes, I've got podcasts, I've got presentations. There's so much else I can share with you. I just think if you're just sharing wildlife images only, you're becoming one-dimensional. And you don't want to be one-dimensional in a world that is oversaturated with wildlife images right now. If I go on my phone now and I type in wildlife photography as a hashtag, and look, I'm going to find in the millions, 20, 30, 40 million images. So if you're wanting to do something with it, why are you just relying then on in the field? And also, just as I'm thinking here, you should also look at splitting up your social into stories and feed because it's two very different psychologies. Think about it. When you guys open your phone, Instagram, what do you do first? Do you check the stories in the top? If mine's there, I hope you do. Click on it. And Trevor and Michael and Al. And so you want to see what they're doing because it's there all the time. Or do you go to the feed? Because the feed is more algorithm managed, if you will. You never know what you're going to get. So it's very easy to tell stories with Instagram story and to document your journey. Whereas the feed is a little bit more curated. That's where you put the images up. Shazmeen, you and I spoke about it on one of our last workshops of maybe flipping it around and putting good images on your story and other stuff on the feed. There is so many, this is a whole different discussion. I like the question, I really do. But I don't go quiet to come back. How do I handle posting when I've not been in the field for a while? I don't go quiet. I never go quiet, really, let's be honest. But I do think you are leaving beautiful real estate on the table for your own brand, for your own images, for your own photography if you do go quiet. Many ways to spin it. You can post a story about the Lightroom process you do. You can post your coffee. You can say, I'm having coffee while processing my images. As long as you create the link of what you do with your audience and they can link it to your photography, they might then start looking forward to when you go back to the field. Because if I get to know you, I want to know what you're doing and I want to follow your journey when you go into the field. So the whole thing comes full circle. Shazmeen, one of the sections of the wildlife photography workshop in the Mara is exactly this. It's what to do with your images afterwards. So we're going to go deeper into that and then I will share more on here as well. Right, guys, there we go. Episode 240 of the Wildlife Photography Podcast is a wrap. Some cool questions in there. 250 is coming up. It's a big one. I need to still think exactly how. I still have the idea of getting the guys around a table and doing an open mic Q&A, if you will. But the problem is I don't have all the guys in the office right now. Who's here? Trevor, Michael, Marlon, and Al's gone. They're in the office. The office team are all having a breakfast this morning. John is not in. Andrew and both Andrews are in the field. Who else is in the field? Johan's in the field. So we'll see. Whatever 250 happens, but I want to try and make it different, if that makes sense. As always, guys, keep the questions coming. I do ask, I just print this out, yeah? I do ask for questions on my Instagram, but whenever you listen to this, if you have any kind of question about me, Wild Eye, the travels, your photography, any questions that I can assist with, let me know, and I would love to include them in some of the future episodes. I have in the past, if it's a pretty solid question, I have in the past made a dedicated episode around that, and that's also cool. So hit me up, my email, gerry@wildeye.co.za. Gerry, Gerry, @wildeye, with a dash in between, .co.za. South African email address, or of course on all the social media platforms, Gerry van der Walt, and I look forward to hearing from you. And also, last one, if you like the podcast, please go and hit a 5-star rating on iTunes, give it a ranking, share it with a friend. I love doing this. Your engagement is like oxygen to me, and the more people I can get and reach and kind of hopefully add value to, that's why I do this. Anyway, guys, have a fantastic day wherever in the world you are, and I'll chat to you in the next episode. My name is Gerry, I'm from Wild Eye. Have a good one.